Hello again. I want to talk about 1991's Cape Fear, directed by Martin Scorsese, starring, of course, Robert De Niro and Nick Nolte. The plot of the film as follows: Nick Nolte is a lawyer who represented De Niro, who played Max Cady, and he misrepresented him. And he went down to jail for 14 years, and now that he's out, he's hell bent on tormenting Nick Nolte and his family. And again, it's a cat and mouse game. The tension starts immediately, even for the 6 second attention span audience of the social media audience of today. This is something you can watch. De Niro is absolutely torn to shreds physically. He's muscle bound. The lines under his eyes are hard. De Niro looks mean anyway, and he's covered in religious tattoos. Um, Now, religion isn't really a theme running through it. It's just something that Max Cady has utilized to give himself a superpower, which is what he appears to be. Like, he's a supervillain. He's like something from Christopher Nolan's Batman. He's got superhuman strength, relentless determination, covered in tattoos, and he's an absolute spectacular comic book villain. There's odes to Nietzsche's Uberman, which is a kind of an idea that was tied in with Fight Club. Brad Pitt, the kind of superhuman version of ourselves that we want to be. This is kind of a negative version of it. I think they're even both tied together. I think, Brad Pitt begins as a fantasy, but ultimately what he becomes is Max Cady. So there's a correlation between it. There's kind of a moral complexity going on through the film, and it's interesting to try to find out what Scorsese is trying to get at, because obviously Max Cady is the villain, but Nick Nolte kind of bended the law. And I think what the message Scorsese is getting to is that once you let any kind of immoral complexity into your life, it mushrooms. Um, Max Cady, of course, educated himself in prison. He chose the right path, but he couldn't forgive. I suppose there's kind of a religious hypocrisy there to go and educate himself such as he did. He was illiterate going into prison, and he lets vengeance and hate consume him, which is something he preaches in the film. Of course, Nick Nolte is having issues with his wife. There's questions of fidelity, and there's kind of sexually moral corruption of his daughter. She's only 16. Max Cady fixates on her, and there's some highly sexualized moments in it where they're not expected. I mean, there is one moment in it, Robert De Niro and his daughter, that's just kind of breathtakingly uncomfortable, and all actors completely surrender to the scene, honestly and carefully and professionally, under the guidance of Martin Scorsese. The film still holds up today. I mean, there's obviously a political divide between the characters. I mean, the morally self-righteousness of Nick Nolte's family screams of the kind of woke left, but the violence and chaos of De Niro represents what can appear to be the right. And, you could watch the news and then watch this film and feel like you're watching the same thing. Of course, it is being remade, produced by Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg with Javier Bardem at the helm. I'm not too sure if he's playing Max Cady or the lawyer. It's a mini-series. It'll be spectacular to see, and it'll be laced with political allusions and references and nods. And the film speaks to the kind of turmoil of today. It doesn't end well for either party in one fashion or another. And I think that's what Scorsese's getting at. Just if you let any sort of moral corruption into your life, it just mushrooms, which I can agree with, Fly straight and keep your head down and everything will be alright. In this case, it just finds a way into your life and erodes it. Photographically, it's brilliant. At times, it's really swift. There's the kind of real old school 90s visual daring of the filmmaking back then. You don't really see that anymore. The films either take their time because you're watching them at home, or they're littered with special effects or told 100 miles an hour. Just simple, grand filmmaking flair to highlight the start or the end of a scene. That's really enjoyable to watch. Of course, it's shot in film stock, which is always beautiful to look at. You don't see much of that anymore. And every frame has kind of meaning or allegory or beauty or menace. It's actually one of the only two jobs that Martin Scorsese took for a studio. This and Goodfellas, would you believe? He was basically a gun for hire. Steven Spielberg put him up to this. Other than that, Martin Scorsese has picked all his own films except Boxcar Bertha. That's for the really posh film fans. He'll know his back catalogue. Check it out. You can always rent it on YouTube. It's my kind of go-to place. So you've got a dodgy box, or if it's on one of the streamers. Um, it's a Friday night popcorn movie. It's great. Like and subscribe. Share the videos, even if you don't like them. I'm trying to widen my viewership. Cheers.